All right. Welcome back, guys. Another episode of Sports Insomniacs. Uh, I think first, let's just talk about the game seven. We're all anticipating. Over here we were rooting for Dallas kind of hard. Him as a Lakers fan doesn't want to see the Clips win. Me as a I like the memes of Clippers choking games and choking series, so I thought it'd be fun. Turns out, Kawhi just dug inside of himself and found out found his 2019-2017 self again, because oh my god, game six especially, but including game seven, he was in a different level, and the Clippers, I think they figured it out in a way.
Yeah, definitely. Clippers game seven, they had probably one of the best games you could ever see from a team perform game seven. Stats were 100% from the free throw line, over 50% shooting from field goal range overall, and then over 40% from 3-point range. It's just an unbelievable display of.
So you're saying as a team 50, 40, 90?
Basically 50, 40, 100. But yeah. That's how good they were. So yeah, I mean, it's hard for any team, especially one that's commanded only by Luka, and that's about it. At this point, I think we can safely say that Porzingis is no longer the pseudo factor, the star that we thought he was going to be when it comes to Dallas and what he was back in New York. They literally said, Rick Carlisle said after the game that you shouldn't blame Porzingis for those poor numbers, because he was only a guy they were spacing like the floor with. And I was like, I mean, if you're going to bring a guy in with that big of a contract to space the floor, like, you should have spent your money a better way. So yeah, that's very tough for the Mavericks. And they had a great season, and Luka has definitely sent to another level, but he needs some help. It's like Dame in Portland. He needs some help to get to the next level. So,
and
yeah.
Of course, I mean, also just credit to the Mavs just for getting to a game seven. I mean, we were, and other pundits, but we were kind of discounting them and saying Clippers in 4 and or Clippers in 5. And what do you know? They took it to a game seven. So, it's credit to them. But I don't think no one will blame the Mavericks for that trade. We might in hindsight, but when it was happening and when you think of the logic through it, the Mavericks clearly should have made that trade for Porzingis. Looking back at it, like the Knicks got nothing in a way. It just sucks that Porzingis, he's so fragile. The same way, how talk about your guy AD, like KP is the same way. He's just very fragile.
So fragile.
I think he's because of how tall he is and how he isn't the most fluid of movers and all of that. It just takes a toll when you're taller than, I guess, your body tells you to be, in a way. I don't know how to frame this, but Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer did a great breakdown on this. He has a video on The Ringer YouTube channel, and it's called it's basically about why Kristaps Porzingis is a problem and how they can't build around him. And it's just the number one thing I took away from that is his defense is just not there. His post defense, that, he was a unicorn, not because he was a 7'3" guy that could shoot threes, but he also played solid as a center. Like, he could do a lot of it. He could not just be a tall shooter. Like, he was a great center as well, as far as interior, like post offense and post defense. And that's kind of been taken away. And if you get to the point where Rick Carlisle calls him a spacer, well, you got Tim Hardaway for that. You got Josh Richardson was nowhere to be seen, but I guess he was supposed to be that, right? So it's just I will say this. It's been I guess a year. It's not necessarily been the offseason yet, but after that Seth Curry trade for Josh Richardson, I think they clearly made a mistake in trading Seth Curry. They could have used another they could have used another relatively consistent 3-point shooter. And I was just thinking about Game 6. I was just watching the end of that and how it felt like these shooters were streaky, and it would have been nice to have another body, have another shooter, so that it could kind of mitigate that and not just allow Kawhi to go on this freaking rampage. I mean, you couldn't. I don't know how they could have stopped Kawhi, but what I'm saying is they could have at least had consistent offense on their own.
Right.
But yeah, I think Dallas definitely needs to build better around Luka. And he was carrying them with a nerve damage in his neck and everything. But needless to say, I mean, the Clippers figured it out. Those last 2 games, it felt like they figured out a small ball lineup that could take advantage of kind of these towers that Dallas set up and in the paint, and it worked. And you think, could it work in the future? Could it work against Utah? But yeah, tell me about the Clippers, man. What are your thoughts in general? Do you think this Clippers, how they played the past 2 games, and I guess in the games they've won, do you think that's going to be able to be? Oh man, losing my words, man. Is that going to transfer over to the conference semifinals against the Jazz?
Oh, well, I'm just trying to think about, how the Clippers played these last 2 games, and really thinking about it, it's 89% Kawhi Leonard basically going off, but also just the role players just showing up in some spots, right? So you had Marcus Morris in Game 7, just he
Luke
became
Kennard.
amazing. Luke Kennard going off the bench, like just catching on fire from 3. And then Reggie Jackson's been good both Game 6 and 7. So I think role player wise, that is a important thing for the Clippers. I think like as much as Kawhi and then to a large extent Paul George can try and to kind of like I guess like start a run, they need the role players to also show up in that sense. And it's good for the Clippers that I trust. I personally think I would trust them more than most role players in the NBA. I feel like they're a little bit more reliable in some ways, and they did pay out the money to do that. They've chosen to sit Rondo more, and that I think that's an interesting decision. But I guess he's just like a leader on the bench, which works as well. So against the Jazz, I think it's going to be an entirely different challenge, though, because the Jazz are a much better defensive team compared to the Mavericks, a much, much better defensive team. And, that's like when you see if there is any drop off with the role players, because stars, they're still going to be the stars. I think like defense wise, it's going to be still going to be difficult to always, discard the star and lock them up unless you have like a all NBA defender, something like I guess a Ben Simmons or Tyrese Matisse Thybulle, something like that. But even then, it's been a little difficult with Philly, the Game 1. So we'll get
go
to
into that, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just something that I'm interested in seeing. Right now, I guess we could make a quick prediction. Clippers, Jazz. What are you thinking? I feel like Clippers, coming off just a few days rest, that does hurt them in some ways. And so, and Utah is not an easy place to play. I would say that again. And they have fans back. So in the light of me being a Lakers fan, I'm gonna pick Jazz. I'm just gonna pick against Clippers, and we'll see what happens. But I just don't like the Clippers, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that was kind of my idea with that transition. Maybe transition into a Jazz Clips preview. So I was thinking. So we were talking about this series. We predicted the series would happen before the playoffs started, before the play-in games, and if let's say coming in, the Clippers were to have swept or gentlemen swept the Mavericks. Same thing with the Jazz. We talked about how the Clippers aren't necessarily the best in clutch stats. We thought that the way that Utah plays as a team, the way that with Donovan Mitchell as a good instigator on offense, but just in general, the way they can pass around, they're the ultimate embody of a 3-and-D team. we thought that they could find a way to basically hinder these Clippers role players and just put it all on Kawhi. But if you're good enough defensively, you could maybe just it's Kawhi versus I don't know. You have Donovan Mitchell, you have Joe Ingles. Everyone can shoot it from three. It's not like just a couple of guys and they're streaky. Like everyone is solid on Jazz. And we were talking about it, and we said, "Oh well, Jazz will win in 6 or 7." Oddly enough, after I've like really watched the Clippers in this series, I mean, we paid attention to them during the regular season, of course, but even though they did worse than we expected of them, I feel better about the Clippers than I did before, because I think the fact that no matter what, not even like Luka was playing bad defense or whoever was on Kawhi was playing bad defense. He was in a different layer. He was in a different level. He ascended to just, playoff Kawhi, but even beyond that, it felt offensively, like that game 6, for example. I don't think offensively, I remember Kawhi doing something that crazy. I mean, he averaged an insane amount of points in that Toronto Raptors playoffs run, but I remember it being in the same way where he was just like, take every shot, it feels like, in the fourth quarter, and I'm in the zone. And if he has this mentality that this is a completely different mentality than the Clippers of last year, then I think and if he's going to be two-way, he's going to really step it up on defense, as he was shown, as he kind of did in those last games. Then I can't really discount them. And I don't know, Paul George didn't like go crazy choking. He was serviceable. He was solid.
He was right.
As a good as a good second weapon. And so I don't know, man. Now I'm really undecided. I mean, because of how well the Clippers can play small ball in the past few days or past few games, they can take advantage of Rudy Gobert, it feels like, in the middle. And you're just and if they can switch everybody, if defensively they're capable enough, which I'm surprised of how good as a whole they were defensively, not just Kawhi and Paul George. If as a whole they can switch defensively and just mitigate and the 3-point shooting from, let's say, Ingles or like Bogdanovich, all these other role guys, right?
Yeah.
And basically kind of stifle Mitchell. I think I don't know. I'm leaning towards Clippers in 6 or 7, just because now I'm seeing it, and I think they could stifle Mitchell in a way. I think they could. Yeah, but again, it's all a toss up. I'm not really married to this take. It's just a hunch that I think Clippers are getting 6, just because I'm just after seeing Kawhi the way he played. I thought Luka was gonna, after game 5, I thought Luka asserted himself as definitively the best player in that series, and then I don't know, Kawhi took it to a whole nother level that is just wow. And in these playoffs, in playoffs in general, of course you need a good stalling cast and solid role players, but it's all about the best star players showing up. And I just think Kawhi, the way he's playing right now, I know Mitchell can turn it on, but Mitchell turned it on against last year in the bubble against a Denver team that is quite bad defensively. This is a completely different beast in the Clippers this year. So that's my take.
That's fair. I think the only thing I'll add at this last point is that I think Donovan Mitchell, he's a little bit – I think one of the problems about Luka this series at the end was that at the fourth quarter, he was sometimes a little hesitant to go to the free throw line. That's the thing that both Simmons and Russillo point out very, very clearly, that it was a problem for the Mavs because, he was the focal point of the offense. And then, for him to just like refuse to go to the line, to settle for shots around the rim, like that really hurt the Mavs in a way too. I don't think Donovan Mitchell would have that problem. I think he's been playing really good, and he's been comfortable at the line. And so If they try to, if the Clippers, I know they won't do the exact same strategy, but if they try to, play Donovan Mitchell in a way that like could be like saying like, okay, you try to beat us, he will go to the line and Donovan Mitchell will get his. So I think that in some ways, that is something that, they'll have to watch out for and that Utah will have advantage there. So yeah, we'll see. It'll be a good series.
And as you're saying that, I'm thinking if it took this much anguish and this much willpower from the Clippers to beat a Mavericks team that we don't really regard as that great all around. I mean, they did good because of Luka this year, not really because of their all around other pieces. And you think about how Utah is a better team overall, then it could go further, but we'll see. I don't know if, because when I'm thinking about those games that the Mavericks won them. Sure, the rest of the team had to show up in a way. They had to score like the 60 or 70 other points, but it was Luka was just carrying them, just making great decisions and just controlling the tempo and controlling the offense and just dictating how they just putting the Clippers, just getting them all confused on defense in games 1, 2, and 5. From especially when I saw it in game 5, how I was just, he scored 40 plus points with nerve damage in his neck and his back. Like,
Jeez.
I can't get over that. Right. And I think, no offense to Mitchell, man, but he ain't no Luka. I'm sorry. So I don't know if, I feel like it was because the Clippers couldn't handle like one superstar player going insane, like really off. I don't think Mitchell is there. We're just going to say that hot take. It's not really a hot take, but just saying that I don't know if, let me phrase this correctly. I think it would have to take like a superstar doing insanely well in order to beat this Clippers team, because those games even were super close when Luka was going insanely off. So I don't know if Mitchell will do that against a defense that's this good. And he's not like that versatile in the skill set. He can drive. He's a great offensive weapon as far as driving and like shooting threes. And he's definitely a decent passer, but it's, you can't compare yourself to Luka right now. You just can't. So that's my thing. That's my 2 cents on it.
Definitely fair. Yeah, looking forward to the series for sure.
Of course, yeah. Maybe game 1 will happen, or games 1 and 2 will happen. It'll shut me up. Speaking of games 1 and 2 that are shutting me up, those Nets, my God,
it's unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Yeah.
So I was wrong. Or I guess, man, my pseudo fandom in the Bucks is taking a hit. Oh my. I thought they could hang with them defensively, and it's without Harden. Harden left, and you're thinking, oh well, now you can do 1-for-1 Drew Holiday on Kyrie, Giannis on KD. No, it's Blake Griffin is really shown up these past those 2 games. Like we're watching these hustle plays. It's like, where was this man? Where was this, like, almost, dare I say, almost vintage like Clippers form, Blake Griffin? And I just seeing the role players light it up, and they're in a different groove. And this is what everyone was saying would happen if the Nets figure out their team and they figure out their chemistry. No one can stop them. No defense, at least in this year's level of defense, or this modern NBA's level of defense, could stop the Nets. And I think that's past few games. Nothing said to the contrary. So I'll believe it's true.
Yeah, I'm completely shocked, I think, honestly. Throughout the year, I've been preaching literally that the Nets need James Harden to like get far in the playoffs to have potential win at a championship, saying that, James Harden's supposed to be the most important guy. And he, in some ways he still is, like, but the Nets have found a way in these past 2 games to overcome that and to evolve into a team that's pure offensive juggernaut style, while somehow also finding a way to play defense and limit the Bucks, which is like unbelievably good job by them. I just don't know how it's done, but yeah, somehow, KD and Kyrie, of course, they're taking the brunt of the offensive load, but their bench has been doing great. Of course, I mentioned Landry Shamet a few pods ago. That man's been doing great too.
Mike James coming out of Europe for
James,
European League.
Jesus, yeah. Yeah, it's just been crazy. And like, look at their lineup. They, I think they're like kind of doing a pseudo Clippers game 7 kind of thing where they're just playing small ball in some ways, and then kind of like taking out how the Bucks are playing. They're like very lengthy, big ball, bully kind of style ball. I've just been also a little bit surprised and a little disappointed in some ways. Think like Middleton and Drew Holiday. I don't think they played as to the level they played. Especially when they played against the Heat. That was just like they were playing great and haven't played as well. Giannis didn't play that well this game, but for game 1 he played well, so I can't really blame him for that. So
I agree.
It comes down to, I think these 2 games definitely are crushing for the Bucks because one, they had such a rest advantage against Nets that you'd think that they'd probably take 1 game away to like make things a little bit more competitive, but now that's all erased. It goes back to Milwaukee. Game 3 is going to be extremely important because any team that goes up 3-0, you're not winning. The other team's not winning the series. It's just basically history. So yeah, it all goes down to game 3, but looking right now, the Nets just look, dare I say, unstoppable. So yeah, it's kind of sad, but it's the Nets. So
I don't think any we'll go through all of these teams, in these other series breakdowns, but the Bucks. This was marketed. I guess this was tabbed as these basically the finals. Whoever wins this is going to be the best team in the NBA and should win the finals. If the Nets are creaming the Bucks, if the Bucks are supposed to be the second best team by this, and the Bucks are like creaming them, not Bucks, if the Nets are creaming them, then I don't know who else can stand a chance. In all honesty,
Jesus, yeah.
I mean, the Bucks were kind of defensively, they were fit to make this mold, to defend the Nets in a way, and just turns out they just hit a different gear, and almost a 40-point rout in game 2. That was just wild. Absolutely wild. I know we were high on the Sixers, and we thought the Sixers could beat the Nets. And maybe they still can. Maybe Embiid, maybe Blake Griffin. Maybe this is just a temporary renaissance for Blake Griffin, and Joel Embiid would take him to town. But we'll see. We'll see about that. But anything else you want to talk about with the Nets and the Bucks?
I mean, I guess it's almost a question for you, but like, would you say that are the Nets like? Do you feel like they're building a wall in any way, or do you think it's just that their small ball lineups working to really just like beat the Bucks in this series? Would you say?
I think the small ball is helping for sure, but I was just game 1. I didn't get to watch. We were setting up for this. I didn't really get to watch a lot of game 2, full disclosure. But for game 1, I was able to watch it somewhat intensely in the first and second quarters, and then and the third quarter. But then later on, it kind of, when it drifted away, I kind of did other things.
Yeah,
I was just shocked by their defense and their hustle. Just the way Blake Griffin was just hustling, not just him, but just that whole. It was like they were playing a sense of urgency on defense, and it kind of gave credence to. So Steve Nash was asked about this in the middle of the year, when the Nets, they were kind of building this team, and you're thinking, oh, this is great, but they can't play defense. And he's like, nah, don't worry. you can always switch defense on when you have talent like this. You can always find a way to switch it on, and they'll figure it out. And it looks like they have. We were doubting this team. I was doubting this team for how bad they were defensively. Thinking a team that's this bad defensively, just I don't know. I don't care. Unless you're in the top 11 in defensive efficiency, you're not going to win the finals. I think it's like a fairly sticky stat. And they were like 29th, or I shouldn't say 29th, but they were definitely 20th and below or below in defensive efficiency. And when you're thinking about that, they turned on the switch. I mean, they had 80. Was it? If I'm not mistaken, the Bucks had 80 points in game 2. 86. My bad. So it's 86 to 125. 125. So they scored some more points. Oh my gosh. So sure, you could say, well, that fourth quarter was like all garbage time and bench players just emptying out their rotation. But I mean, they limited them to such small numbers in the first few games. It was like not first few quarters. So, man, I think the Nets may have figured out a way on defense. They might have figured that out, and I think that if that happens, they don't have to be super spectacular in offense. Then they could, but I mean, they are because of KD and because of Kyrie, and if James Harden gets better, like watch out. So, yeah.
Not much more to say. It's just utter dominance. So hard to say much about that once you've seen greatness like that for the past 2 games. So
I guess this is kind of a semi aside. So I know that a lot of, for example, I'm thinking about LeBron when I'm saying this. There's some coaches that like for their first year they might do super well, and it's because of their star players. For example, like David Blatt went to the finals. Ty Lue won one championship. Frank Vogel won in his first year, right? And you're thinking, oh, this is all because of the star players. It was because of LeBron is carrying them, and they're not really doing too much. I just want to say, I don't think we should be treating Steve Nash that way. I don't know if people are. Maybe I'm inventing the straw man that is. But what he's done as a coach, how the storms he's had to weather, the fact that they have to actually rely on Blake Griffin tells you how outside of those 3 players, it's not like they have so much talent. And the way they're scheming up, like even in the regular season, using Brown as a center when he's like 6'4", like Jesus. I think we should give credit to Steve Nash for how this team is doing. On top of course, there's superstars and it's a super team, but I think there is something that he's doing to make this cohesion work. There's been a lot of ups and downs with this team, and I think this is not just this fire back at Stephen A. calling this like white privilege. I think this is definitely showing how he's a great coach. Or he's good. I'll say good. We'll see you later on, but
sure.
He's done a solid job in his first year, and I wouldn't chalk this up to it's his star players carrying them.
Sure. And it always helps to have Mike D'Antoni as your lead assistant as well. Having that.
Okay, that's of course.
He was Nash's coach back in the day in the Phoenix Suns, famous 7 seconds or less offense. So they have that continuity there on the coaching bench as well. So, good for them.
All right. So let's transition into a series that at least only one game has happened, but I'm shocked. And it's the Hawks and the Sixers. Embiid was back. It seems we got some clarification that it wasn't like completely torn. Meniscus. It was, just a slight, I guess, tweak or slight sprain on it. And when you watched him play, he was playing, solid relatively. It wasn't like he didn't look anything completely damaged or didn't look like a shell of himself. He was playing, pretty good, but that didn't matter. It felt like, I guess until the fourth quarter, but that didn't matter because Jesus, like Trae Young and company, my God. Wow.
Wow.
What are your thoughts on Young and Young Ets, man?
Man, I think Trey Young he's ascended to another level like this season, and the playoffs. From that bow at Madison Square Garden, Game 5. That was Game 5, right? Yeah,
Yeah, that was the
Game
eliminated.
5. Oh my God! And then just this performance here at Wells Fargo Center, Philly, is just something else. I mean, watching this guy play is just a treat. He is fearless. He is basically what we get if I guess like the best closest version of Steph Curry. Now that Steph Curry's not in the playoffs, and just watching him like light up defenses and just like and this is against one of the best defenses in NBA in Philadelphia, and he's still like just doing his thing. One thing I will mention though is I think that it was a close game, and a reason why Philly lost this game was kind of because their bench didn't play that well, and Atlanta's bench played really good. Um, it just like if you just saw like the plus minuses, really the Atlanta starters, they got quote unquote outplayed by the Philly starters. But I mean, like Trey and Bogdanovich, they still played really well. The Atlanta bench absolutely killed the Philly bench, and in a game that was like semi kind of close, and then was a close game at the end. That does make the difference. So it was a tough night for benches in Philly. So sometimes you could see a bounce back game, I guess. So
I mean, it was close at the end, but
it wasn't close in the middle.
it doesn't tell the story. Like if you look at the end score and you say, I just think, as a whole, it's not like Philly could have done more on offense when Trey Young was on defense, right? I mean, this guy is bad at defense. Like they could have attacked him more, and they didn't. Like there were still some shortcomings. It felt like Philly offensively that they could have made up for it. Even if your plus minus argument, like, it's clearly true. Like look at the numbers don't lie, but I just think that game, the fact that you couldn't really the bench was that bad is a little bit of a concern. I know we've talked about how in the playoffs the benches kind of shortened. The teams kind of shortened their rotation so that the bench players don't play as much. But
Right.
you still need some production because, my gosh, when you have the way that the Hawks were playing was something.
They're playing good. They were playing very good, and to steal a game on Philly's home court, which I mean in the past few seasons they've been known to play pretty well at home. Yeah, that's very impressive. So,
I guess I have a question for you.
yeah.
Do you think this is going to be the norm for the rest of the series? Do you think, or do you think that what Philly's done what Philly did in the fourth quarter? Do you think it was like a more of an aberration from their bench, and that they can pull it up into shape and they'll figure it out how to handle it? Or do you think this is just a story or just a sign of things to come?
That's a good question. Okay. So here's the thing. I think Embiid, he was out a game or two in the previous series, so they had to like kind of like compensate without him this first game back. So I think one of the things that they had to do this game was a little bit, I guess, like trying to reestablish some stuff on the fly a little bit. Just having him be back in the lineup. I feel like next game, I would expect Philly, first of all, to bounce back in some ways. They're definitely not happy to lose at home. In the first game to Atlanta. So I feel like they'll definitely get their bench together and like have a strong game. However, I don't think Atlanta is going to back down that much as well. I would say their bench played as well as I could, you could have them, but I don't think they're going to drop off that far either, because Nate McMillan's done, again, he's done a great job, and we're going to give him as much praise as, he deserves all the praise that we're giving him. They've been going amazing on defense and just been playing lights out. And so, on this Nate McMillan Atlanta Hawks 2021 postseason team, they're not going to do that bad, even if they do worse than what they did in game one. So, yeah, it's going to be a good series, I should say.
I mean, Embiid was still solid. Tobias Harris stepped up. I mean, these Philly starters. I mean, there's good. There's something good with them. We'll just see if that plays out, or they can further build on that.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess I asked that question because I really don't know either, or I don't really know, but I think you summed it up pretty well. Yeah, that's not much more to say.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's like kind of hard to, really like give a prediction, but for me, I just feel like, when you look at the Philly bench, just like looking at those players, you have like Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle, Shake Milton, Court Moss. Like, you have like players that I find would be pretty good bench players, if not like, they could be starting role players on other teams. Like, these players, they should be playing better than the level they were playing game one. That's what I feel like. And I feel like good players always get a chance to regress to the mean, which is better than what they played. So that's my take on that. But hey, anything could happen.
Solid. Because I mean, I will say this though. Does that game or kind of deter you in any way? So we were high on Philly. We had, let's say, Philly beating the Nets. I think more of how the Nets are playing against the Bucks was deterring me from thinking that the Sixers could beat the Nets. But so you don't think the series or this game has given you any pause for how the Sixers could do against the Nets as far as on their side?
Yeah, I understand. And, I would say like there could be some pause, but I think to not make it an overreaction, which I think if I did have pause now, it could be somewhat of an overreaction. Game 2 tomorrow, if that turns out to be one, a Hawks win anyway, or two, like just like they played kind of bad, then I'd be, justified to say that I'd have some pause in terms of the Philadelphia 76ers having a chance to beat the Nets in that case. But as of now, not yet. So
that's fair. That's fair, man. Yeah, that's definitely fair. It's just we know. Again, box scores don't tell the whole story, but
yes,
you're looking down and you're just seeing these, you can just see the scores. It feels like if this team is so great defensively, for as much as the Hawks scored in that first half, it feels, if they couldn't really stop the Hawks defense, again, you could go on that, well, the bench players just played lights out for the Hawks and maybe it's, they could regress to the mean. The Sixers could regress to the mean in the other way, not necessarily regression, but progression. It still regressed to the mean statistically, but whatever. Moving on, but man, where was I? God damn it. So if Embiid is relatively solid, if Harris is relatively solid on offense, and this is the point I was saying before, right? I'm kind of worried, I guess, if that they were allowed this many points to the Hawks, defensively, if they're this great of a team, how are you going to handle the Nets? But then again, I think the Nets, we just saw how great they are offensively. We saw how the Nets are actually playing defense, are stepping up to at least average to maybe slightly above average when you're looking at those two games, just taking those two in a bubble. It's then you're just thinking, my God, I don't even know if the Sixers. We were also lending a lot of, Embiid would be fully healthy. He would not necessarily have any minutes restrictions or anything like that, which you don't in the playoffs. But knowing his health, knowing how sometimes he can't go necessarily like too hard and rough ride on him because his body could break down. Correct. These centers are kind of fragile, man, these big men. But so we gave them all that credence that Thybulle and Simmons and all of them could step up to be just super worldly defensively. But if there is any bit of leeway in that front, I will get some pause too. But I think you're right in saying that, and calling for us to wait for game 2, wait for tomorrow,
Right.
to see, or wait for tomorrow to see how the Hawks do, and if the Sixers have adjusted and can pull this out. Because if the Hawks win, even if the Sixers play bad or play good, if the Hawks win, period, it will give me pause, because the Hawks, correct me if I'm wrong, this is I guess weird take. The Hawks seem to me like a JV version of the Nets. When you think about how they built that team recently, how they've kind of been constructing that team. Of course, Clint Capella is a great post paint presence as compared to whatever they've had for the Nets. But I think when you think about how they built this team on an offensive mindset, and then McMillan has come in later to give a defensive, to really help them on defense. But just purely by their construction itself, like it's a bunch of instant offense players together. So, and the fact that it's kind of working out this way, do you agree with my assessment then, that the Hawks are in a way JV Nets?
Yeah, I could get behind that. I think the Hawks, they've always said that the Hawks, looking at their roster on paper, which you could say that on paper for Nets too, they look amazing. Like they look so freaking good. It's like, can they actually get it done? Was the question for both teams. The Nets so far are saying we can get it done. And the Hawks, I mean, of course they played the Knicks and won games against Sixers, but they are getting it done as well, because they are just very talented in terms of the players they have, right? They're starting 5. I mean, yes, you have Solomon Hill starting game 1, but usually that small forward spot would be, either DeAndre Hunter, who didn't play game 1, or in some ways Delino Gallinari.
Yeah.
That rotation, Trae Young, Bogdanovich, let's put Gallinari, John Collins, Clint Capella, that is a very solid rotation. That starting 5 seems, as good as almost any in the NBA. It's just that they are young, they're raw, and how well can they put it together, especially in a playoff environment. But they've been doing fine. So again, yes, I would agree in some ways. Yes.
So with that in mind, right? Of course, if they lose game 2, there's bigger problems for the Sixers. But if they lose, they're essentially losing into a similar version team as far as how 3-point shooting oriented, how offensively oriented the team, the players are themselves. How it's controlled, like Bogdanovich and Trae Young. Let's be honest, these guys, before McMillan, were pretty bad defensively, right? So with that in mind, if you lose to that, it's then you got to play a much more experienced version of that, a much more veteran. You have KD, Kyrie, and all of that. If your defense can't necessarily handle this, how are you going to handle that? Is my take on
that. Yeah, absolutely.
But of course, if they're down 2-0, they got bigger problems. So they shouldn't be thinking about the next round, of course. All right. So, man, we've been so enraptured in this. I realize I have the oh shoot, something happened with my computer here, or something with my video feed. But while we're recording this, the first game of the Suns and Nuggets is happening.
That's going on. Yep.
I don't know if you have it up. Trying to figure out what's going on with this game.
I'm just looking at a dead box score, but in the time we recorded, when we started recording, I saw that the Nuggets were up, but now I'm seeing that the Suns have 11-point lead on the Nuggets. So the Suns came back. That's all I know.
That kind of encapsulates what I think about this series. Not in I think the Suns are just gonna win it all, but as far as, I can't really tell, man. It's one minute I'm thinking, oh well, Jokic is so good. How is Ayton going to defend this man? And he's going to do so well around him. And then the other minute I'm thinking, well, the Suns will win this just because I mean, they're just a better team. It feels like just defensively and uh, yeah, I'll just say they're just a better team defensively and even offensively. If Chris Paul can facilitate this offense, Devin Booker stepped up the way he has, then they should win it too. So I'm like at a crossroads here. So I game one definitely overreact, but if game one is any indication, it looks like Denver's only scored 80 points. Phoenix has done quite a good job. Maybe this is a sign of things to come that Phoenix will win this series or at least do relatively well in it. But before we go into that, what are your thoughts? Who do you think is going to win? Give me your predictions. Lay it out for me.
Well, I think, I would expect in some ways Phoenix to win. It's just because like I think Phoenix as a whole, like they have they're a healthier roster. That's we have to say that because Denver's just had too many injuries to their star guards, and it's just they've been impressive with like their replacement guards. And again, we've talked about how Jokic has elevated almost every single player on that team. However, like the Suns are just one healthier, and two, they have a very, very talented rotation. I think like we've given like less credit to Jay Crowder than like we probably should have, and we did like at the end of the Lakers series. Like a man's like actually for a journeyman very effective and a winner. He's like done really well. Kind of, I guess to a lesser extent, an Andre Iguodala kind of guy, like a tough guy, a guy that like defense does a lot of glue stuff, which is important for any good team. I guess I should stop betting against when Chris Paul is going to get hurt because that's one of the things that I always have a concern about the Suns is that Chris Paul gets hurt and then things kind of unravel from there. But I think at this point that even Chris Paul's on the bench, like he can't play or anything like that. You have Devin Booker there to really like elevate his own game and to like go off. So I'm looking at probably a Suns win in 6, something like that. That's what I predict. But what would you say?
I mean, that's solid. I think Suns in 6 is a solid prediction. I think, Chris Paul, he's getting better. I mean, it doesn't look like his shoulder is affecting him too much.
Yeah.
I mean, he's maybe not taking as many shots because maybe it's it's tweaked his shooting, like his shooting motion a little bit. But I mean, as far as passing is concerned, I don't think anything is stopping him from that. It's facilitating defense and all of that. Denver's just not that great defensively, right? And if you look at Mikal Bridges, can great off it. Like at least he can shoot. He's solid from 3, great 3 and D guy, but he's solid from 3 and just solid offensively. Jay Crowder, we know how he's literally the embodiment of a 3 and D wing, like just great defense and then just hits some threes or chucks some threes and some come in, some go in. And of course, Devin Booker, I feel like this during the Lakers series, especially, has ascended to, I shouldn't say ascended in the same way, let's say Trae Young has ascended. It's not that quite of a drastic jump because Devin Booker has already been known to be quite good, but it's just seeing him in the playoffs. He hasn't like wilted. He's gotten better. And you can see how he was great in that game 6 against the Lakers, but even just against the Lakers period. Like say all you want about the Lakers offensively, but defensively, they did a decent job in the perimeter. And still Devin Booker was able to just, or at least they are solid on the perimeter, but Devin Booker was still able to just do his magic, it felt like.
Absolutely. And yeah.
And Cameron Payne is great offensively. I think they got some good offensive pieces, and Denver's not that great defensively. And then Denver, when you look at it, I mean, Jokic, I saw that first quarter. I mean, Jokic was going off. Like I was like, how are they going to defend him? Like, I mean, Ayton, no offense to Ayton, but he ain't it. You would think defensively, as from what we've seen. And I don't know, we kind of been zoned out for the second and third quarter and half of this fourth quarter because Phoenix is up by 13, so maybe something's going right for them. defensively. But of course, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, Chris Paul, but all these other players, they can lock down defensively as compared to Portland. We talked about this the last time we were recording that Monte Morris ain't going to score like 20 plus points, 30 around 30 points because the Suns are at least quality defensively. And the broadcaster saying they're the best team defensively during the playoffs. That could just be the Lakers were quite bad offensively, but whatever. But that there is some credence to that because even in the regular season, they're quite good on defense. So with that in mind, I think Phoenix and 6 sounds solid. That sounds like a decent prediction, and I'll co-sign on that. Phoenix and 6 seems fair.
Right. I think this series though, when it really matters, I think the pivot is at game 3. I think usually when you say reactions and getting everything solid down, it's game 2 because of Denver, where Denver plays, a mile above the ocean, how Phoenix is actually sea level basically in their elevation wise and everything like that. I think that it is important actually when they go to and travel to Denver and see how Phoenix plays and adapts to that situation. So for me, I think game 3 will be the actual pivotal one. Game 2 usually that's the one that you'd like to see a lot of evening out important series stuff like that, but we'll see it's going to be interesting.
Man, they showed highlights of Chris Paul shooting threes, getting some alley-oops in there. Their Suns are up by a bit now, my gosh.
Sure.
So yeah, that's true. Denver's home court, it's something for sure. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, look at the last series Denver played. There were blowouts back and forth. You couldn't really take anything from one game. I think that game 5 was just pivotal just because it felt like it broke down the morale of the Blazers. Just poor Lillard has gassed up. He's not gassed up, but he's just, he's worn out. So, there's not much you could take from one game, maybe against this Denver squad. You can't really take much because that game 1, Portland, I think Portland really did a number on Denver in game 1. So, who's to say if this is indicative, but that's a fair point to make.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about with the NBA before we head on to other stuff, man?
Well, the only thing I'd maybe talk about is, Damian Lillard and what his plans will be in the off season. I heard about a news source saying that Lillard publicly called out Jason Kidd to be the next coach for the Portland Trailblazers.
I saw that too.
And Kidd subsequently removed his name from the coaching candidate pool, which is I understand why. He didn't want to be put into an awkward situation where the Blazers were basically forced to choose him in some ways, but that's also interesting in some ways too. And it's and then I thought yesterday when I was looking at a preview of Space Jam how Lillard was he's in Space Jam too. So it's oh, well, he spent some time with LeBron and Anthony Davis. And I'm could this happen? Could this really happen? But it just could be a Lakers fan trying to dream about situations that aren't possible. But, we'll see someday down the road.
I think you'd have to give up 80. And I know you've talked about how you're kind of down for it.
I might be down for it, actually, at this point.
You'd have to give up 80 for Lillard. But I don't even know who would take it. I don't think the thing is though, I think he really wants to stay with the Blazers.
I think he does too. Yeah.
This is his franchise. He has a lot of say and a lot of sway. He actually has they kind of not but on major decisions they see what his input is, or they actually at least in some modicum of respect to him as a franchise not just player, but just as a I guess a figurehead, but even more than that. Like a figurehead means that it's superficial, but it's not. Like, I feel like he
Right.
really likes Portland, and I think he really likes he just wants to win, of course. I think he definitely want to get a contender. He'd want like a second option for sure. Uh,
Sure.
but I don't think he'd want to leave. And I think I think it would do a lot of damage to the Trailblazers franchise as well if they trade him. Because sure, you might say, well, Anthony Davis is younger and he's great too. And we got twin towers, you might say, and Nurkic and Davis. But you can't step back from that, I think. So I think he's going to stay there. But who could they give him? So I guess, are we going to play GM? Do we want to play Trailblazer GM?
We can do that real quick. Let's do that.
Let's do that. Let's do this. All right. So what are we thinking? So we have CJ McCollum there. I know CJ McCollum has been a solid piece for him, but I think if we need to go to the next step, I think we got to switch out CJ for someone else, or we got to actually give a solid wing player. A Norman Powell is decent, but this ain't it for the next step. So who do you think would want CJ McCollum, man? And what can we get for CJ McCollum?
Dang. See, that's tough. CJ McCollum, he's a good player, I think. And I think at this point, there is some, people saying that he's better as a 3 than a 2. But, it is like kind of hard to trying to think like who would take him and then what you'd give back for him. Would someone like I don't know if the Wizards say like we want to go into a rebuild and Bradley Beal is gone to Portland. So you pair up Damian Lillard with Bradley Beal, send back CJ McCollum and basically the Portland farm because the Wizards are rebuilding. Would that be a viable situation? I think Beal, it would be a definite upgrade over McCollum in some ways, but I feel like then again your team would be kind of gutted if you did that. So
the thing is, I think in that case you're kind of. Here's the thing: when you think about how McCollum and Lillard play together, right? It's not really like. It's like one person gets a turn, then another person gets a turn, and so on and so on. It feels like they're both like have similar skill sets rather than complementing each other.
Yeah.
So I feel like Beal is in a similar mold. Like it would be, is this Beal's turn or is it Damian Lillard's turn? So on and so on. Right? I think you want to give. I mean, sure, you want someone to step up when like Lillard is gassed and his tank is empty, but I think you also want someone to like you can facilitate too. Damian Lillard, like someone who isn't like another guard, like it's like a better perimeter piece or like a better, I guess what I'm saying, like a better, what's it called?
Like a wing or someone like that.
Big man, or a wing. Because like Covington ain't it. Norman Powell is decent, but maybe you could put. Is it fair? But hear me out. You could put Norman Powell at the 2, kind of treat him the same way other teams treat, like the way the Warriors kind of treat what's his face? Jesus, Klay Thompson. How he's a 2, but like defensively, you just put him on whoever because Norman Powell is good defensively, but like so you can move him up to the 2, and then you get a better three guy. Is that fair?
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Who would be your 3 guy then? Would you say?
I mean, that's the thing. I proposed that, and now I'm confused. And now I'm trying to think of who would be my 3.
Because I'm looking at the market for like free agents. A possibility you could say would be John Collins of the Atlanta Hawks. But what I'm thinking right now is if the Hawks are playing this well in the playoffs and, I don't know, say in some situation they beat the Sixers, I don't think the Hawks are going to let go of John Collins that easily at that point. So, at that point, like it's like, why would we try to trade for McCollum for John Collins? I don't think that's an upgrade. I think that's what a downgrade, and it doesn't fit what the Hawks want. So that doesn't work either. And then, any other free agents, like unrestricted free agents, like that's just a market step down in terms of like who's actually, available there this summer. So, options are limited. You might want to do like a sign and trade with like some players, but again,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, my only thing about Beal was that him and Westbrook almost had that like you take your turn, this is my turn, like kind of deal too. And I guess that was okay, but I think the Washington Sporting cast wasn't that great either. Like, I mean, like, yeah, sure, Gafford was good, but Gafford's like, isn't he like a rookie or something like that? And they lost Thomas Bryant for the year with a torn ACL. Like, that was supposed to be their center. Who Thomas Bryant played really well until he got
Yeah,
injured.
Thomas the take engine in the fantasy community. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so he played well until he got injured. So, yeah, the Portland Trailblazers in a very tough place, and the last. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I guess you'd have to think of teams that they're willing to take on a team that's willing to rebuild, but they have like a star piece that's kind of disgruntled. And I'm trying to think of the teams on the top of my head that are like that. And they can't really like because if they are rebuilding or they are a young team, it's like they like the players they have.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah,
exactly.
I was almost gonna suggest Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but I'm just like, there's no way Oklahoma City's gonna get off him because Shai's way too young. Number one, he's really promising, and they basically got a heist of a trade from the Clippers in exchange for Paul George. There's no one. I don't think anything justifies the value of Shai to the Blazers. Like Oklahoma City has enough first round picks that they don't need any more first round picks at this point. It's like turn these picks into actual players, right? For them to like actually even do anything. And also, I don't think Portland has that young core. They don't even have enough good young players to even trade to propose for Shai. So I don't think that's on the table either. That was one of my thoughts, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Here's another thing, and it's not necessarily CJ, but as much as I hate it personally, there's a lot of noise that the Celtics want to move from Marcus Smart.
Marcus Smart, okay.
Marcus Smart were in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a glue guy, just as like another, sure, he might not be great offensively, but it gives defense and it gives some sense of a culture building, a kind of glue guy that you can rely upon in times rather than, I don't know what they got right now. And they're so bad defensively. That could be a possibility. I'm just trying to, man, it's kind of hard, the situation that they're in. It just feels so bad for Dame. I know there is a possibility where you can, I mean, this is not my D either, although it makes sense. You could build the Blazers like the Hawks were built this year. How they just, Trae Young, you have Damian Lillard, and you just try and build like offensive pieces around him, and try to do it that way rather than just trying to find like two-way like great defensive players that can't really provide you anything on offense. I love how I'm proposing this now, as I just said, that maybe Marcus Smart should go, but to Portland. Point is that is one avenue they can take. So it's possible, but man, we're looking at this, right? So we're saying, well, is Bradley Beal a shot? We're not sure. I'm thinking is do the Pelicans want to jump the gun and just get Brandon Ingram to the Blazers, and then they get CJ McCollum, because Ingram and Zion don't really work together that well.
That's true.
But maybe you got, if Lonzo were able to stay, if they got Lonzo to stay, I mean, he's going to be a free agent upcoming, I think. You get Lonzo to stay, but then you have Lonzo as like a good point distributor. But yeah, CJ McCollum, if you ever need to do something as a guard, and he could also be a playmaking abilities, and then just open up space for Zion. that could work. As far as that's from the Pelicans standpoint, I don't know if the Blazers want Brandon Ingram, but I'm just throwing stuff out there. Maybe you don't give up McCollum, maybe you give up someone else. But if you could find a way to get Brandon Ingram, maybe you give up Covington and like a couple like picks and stuff like that for Brandon Ingram, maybe that could work too.
Right. I'm trying to think like even like Kelly Oubre from the Warriors, like you could try to nab him. I'm almost thinking like Tyler Hero didn't even play that good this season with the Heat. Could the Heat want to swap McCollum with Hero or like some like farm picks or something like that? I don't know, but like
I don't. They shouldn't be in rebuilding mode, and I guess they shouldn't be rebuilding mode. So if in that sense, so my thing is like it would be Brandon Ingram plus something else, maybe like another solid player. I'm trying to think of who it would be. Maybe like Steven Adams. I don't know.
Lonzo Ball, someone like that.
Well, Lonzo Ball in the sign-in trade or whatever, or they would just get Lonzo in free agency. But I don't know. Like Lonzo and Dave kind of like conflict as far as like they kind of share similar.
That's true.
See, it's hard being the GM of the Blazers. Say everyone's saying get Lillard better pieces, and we're over here like it's kind of hard to, man.
It is very hard.
We made such bad decisions in the past that we put ourselves in this tough spot. So yeah. Yeah,
I mean, one final thing. I know it would hurt a lot of my my friends up here in the Pacific Northwest, and as small market GMs, it hurts to hear this, but I've been hearing Kendrick Perkins, and I don't always trust Kendrick Perkins on his takes. What he said, this Lillard situation reminds him of when Kevin Garnett was at the Minnesota Timberwolves, and ultimately decided to go to the Celtics. What he's basically saying is that he wants Damian Lillard to force his way out of Portland, because he said KG said his biggest regret was not going to Boston earlier. That was his biggest regret, and so basically Damian Lillard's kind of in some ways wasting his prime away in Portland and not getting like to the promised land, 2 championships, to greatness. That's what all players want, and so I feel like this summer, if they don't propose him a compelling enough package and say like, okay, this is what we actually want, you will see that Lillard will start his process of maybe forcing his way out of Portland. We'll see.
That's a fair point. I think that's also more apropos because there's a misconception in the KG to Celtic story though. Like KG didn't necessarily want his way out of the Timberwolves.
That's true.
He didn't like he had like certain problems with the ownership and all of that, but he didn't want to like he wasn't like I want to get out of here. It wasn't like I mean, of course, it wasn't anything like Harden, but it wasn't even like
he wanted
Anthony
to stay.
Davis.
Yeah,
he wanted to stay in Minnesota. Same way you might say that Lillard wants to stay in Portland. So it might be even more on the nose, that comparison, that's Kendrick Perkins saying something smart. Wow. It's
yeah, I know.
Wow, Bam added a Bayou. This is the same man.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, just as a crazy proposal, Dame on the Miami Heat, like
I was just thinking
that would be something special. That would be something special, honestly. And I think he fits the mentality of the Heat culture.
Saying. He would. And I think they're trying to build something too. If that could work too. I guess as the GM, I gotta say we gotta blow it up and rebuild. I think what taking outside of this, I think what's more likely going to happen is that they're going to hire a new coach, and then they're going to say we're going to run it back and do the same thing. And then I think next year is when like
things go
crazy.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
Breaking point, yeah.
Breaking point is going to be next year. I think this year is like they're going to get a new coach, see if it like gels with Dame, see if he even though he's not like anti-Portland, like see if that's a good chemistry with the coach, and then see if like maybe they do a great job. Maybe it's like a Steve Kerr, Mark Jackson type, like insane improvement. Right. So yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah.
That's all we can do. All we can do is see. We can't be the GM of the Blazers. We can't do that. So all we can do is see. All right. So we'll be back with more sports stuff. All right.